That's quite on.
Liz, are you new?
You're good.
Now that the recording is started and it's 9 o'clock, I will call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. And I will verbally confirm that we have quorum. We're missing two councillors, and obviously one of them is the chair of this committee, who does not have an excuse to be missing today. She has a reason. Two of her children are graduating from university and high school, and one of them with a gold medal. So here. Family first. Good for Susan, Councillor Mazan. I will verbally confirm that the CAO, the clerk, and members of the senior management team are present. And I'll advise that the public input on the agenda was invited at the following email address, which everybody knows, and none was received. I will read the public notice. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka website. Should say Muskoka Lakes, and on the YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. I will acknowledge that there was a supplementary agenda, and it was to remove item 9B, which is the award of procurement for the budget software. That's been moved to the council agenda. Members, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Councillor Roberts? Sorry. I'm
My twin brother.
Councillor Roberts' twin brother, Mr. Edwards.
Mom can't even tell us apart. 11B, the community grant programs, one of them, the Minetones, we are members of. So I will excuse myself on that one. If it could be pulled separate, please.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, I will go back to public comments. There was one received late last evening from our Muskoka on the remuneration policy. It was almost 11 o'clock last night. So there was a public comment received. Some explanatory notes. The motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting. And members shall physically raise their hands until the chair has confirmed the vote. And if the vote is unclear, a verbal vote will be recorded by the clerk. This will not be considered a recorded vote. Okay. We do have invited presentations, and I would like to introduce. Now, am I going to introduce Nicole White? Are we going to have staff? Would you like to do that, Director Donaldson?
Thank you, Chair. So Nicole White is here. She's a partner from BDO and our audit partner for the 2024 audited financial statements.
Thank you, and welcome, Ms. White.
Oh, is it on? Oh, I think so. Yay. Oh, great. Lovely having my voice. So I'm just going to take you through a presentation I prepared. This isn't your financial statement. This is just sort of another way to look at your numbers. So if you could move to the next page. I don't know if you can make it. Oh, one more page. Can you make it fit on one page? Shrink it a bit. Okay, so just there. Oh, now I can't see it. Okay, well, this is a graph and it's just got, oh, she's so prepared. Thank you. I was not. So it's just sort of a 5-year history of some of your key markers. So the revenue line, this isn't in color. There's a line for revenue, a line for expenses, a line for your net financial assets, your capital additions, and your annual surplus. And so it just kind of shows you trends, and you can see they're all kind of going, upward, but sort of along the same line. So it's just to give you sort of a 5-year history of some of the key financial items in your financial statement. I think you should all have this somewhere. You can, look at it later, but it's just to give you a visual. Next slide. So again, we just sort of divide, I do a 2-year picture of revenues in a pie chart form just between the major categories. So you've got your federal government money, provincial transfers, then property taxes are green, which is the largest source of our revenue. We have investment income, user fees, and other. And the pie charts, as you can see, are very similar year to year for the breakdown of where your revenues come from. Next slide. So this is sort of your expense side of the statement. It's just to give you sort of a 5-year trend between your the categories we report on. So you'll have general government, protection services, transportation, health, recreation and culture, and planning and development. And you can also see they're all kind of been trending upwards, which is really not a surprise. Expenses seem to go up every year. It's just to give you, again, sort of a 5-year visual. Next slide, please. This is one I've added this year, and it's just to give you, it's the same 5-year, but it's all the categories of the various reserves that are set aside for specific purpose. So you can just see the historical trend, and these are just balances at December 31st for every year indicated there. Next slide, please. So again, this is similar. This is your expenses by object, just in pie chart form, and you'll see year to year, the categories remain fairly similar in regards to sort of the percentage of each. So we have it broken down to salaries and benefits, which is the largest one, materials, contracted services, rent and financial expenses, interest on long-term debt, contributions to others, and amortization expense, which is how we expense your capital assets. So that's just sort of a little snapshot, a little different way to look at your financial results. So I think the next page is going to be the actual financial statement. Or maybe it might be in another attachment. Now that I work from home, I don't have a printer at home. I print all these things off at paper. So this will be your formal financial statement. The first page, I'll just start talking while they find the report, but will be our audit report, which again is a clean opinion this year. It means everything is fairly stated in accordance with the public sector accounting standards that the municipality has to follow. So the audit report is about, it's 2 pages long, and we plan on signing this once they're approved. So it will be a clean opinion. Scoot ahead 2 pages to the statement of financial position. That's one. So this is what business people know as your balance sheet. For municipality, it's the statement of financial position. So you'll see your financial assets, 32 million last year and 30 million this year. Then we have our financial liabilities. They're about the same year over year, down about $500,000. So our net financial assets this year were 9.7 million versus 11 last year. So it's still a very, very positive position. You have more than enough financial assets to cover your financial liabilities. Below the line are your non-financial assets. So your tangible capital assets, which we did some investment this year, they're up. And then inventories of supplies and prepaid. So our overall accumulated surplus is now 85 million compared to 81 last year. So next slide, please. There's your statement of operations. So this is all your incomes for the year. So you'll see our total revenues this year at 26 million compared to 23, and our budget was 25. So pretty close to being on budget there. Our expenses this year were 22 compared to 19 with our budget of 20. So an annual surplus of 4 million compared to 3.3 last year. Next slide, please. So first page I mentioned our net financial asset position went from 11 million to 9.7. This sort of shows you how we got there. So we have our annual surplus of 4 million. We spent 10 million on capital assets. Then we amortized our assets for 4.2 and gets us down to negative 1.7. And then we purchased some supplies and used up some of our prepaid. So we had an overall decrease of 1.9 million. That's how we get to the net financial assets result. Those are kind of the highlights of the financial statement. There's notes in here that sort of give a few more details in some of the balances, but if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilor Portsmouth?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. On the reserve question, or let me just get back to the page. I noticed that some of the reserves are negative, and I was wondering how they get negative. So, I was just wondering how they get negative. It is fire and emergency and fleet and equipment information have gone from a positive position, some of them as late as 2022. And then we have information technology, which seems to be bountiful.
Through you. Yes, and I'll address those in, I'm going to speak after Nicole.
Oh, okay.
Nicole has another appointment, so we let her go first.
All right, super, thank you.
And that we'll discuss that a bit more.
Well,
If that's okay.
yep, of
Is that okay?
course it is.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I'll ask my standard question, which I ask at every finance and audit. Is there anything that would keep you awake if you were in our chair? That's always a good answer. No. Yeah, that's a different topic, your worship.
Blocked it out.
Councillor Kent? Yeah, put your mic on, please.
The table reserves set aside for specific purposes by council is actually in the presentation. It's similar to the one in that number doesn't, the decline from 12.5 in 2021 to 7.6 at the end of the year in 2024, that doesn't concern you?
It's how you've chosen to budget and use those reserves. So typically you set aside the reserves for a specific purpose, and it just means we've used some of them for those purposes. So, and when Marilyn goes through some of the details, she'll probably answer a little bit better than that. But they do kind of sometimes go up and down depending on what projects happen that you plan to use reserves for.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, Councillor Kent, could you put your mic off, please? If there are no other questions, I'll thank Ms. White on behalf of the township for you and your team's hard work.
You're very welcome.
Ms. Jeffrey, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so to add to Nicole's presentation, Section 294 of the Municipal Act indicates the statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and recommended by the Public Sector Accounting Board of Canada. And that causes statements not to be in the same format as you're used to seeing. To help bridge that difference in the report, Table 1 brings it back to the format that you are used to seeing. At the bottom of Table 1, there's a deficit of $320,848. And the difference is primarily from the report that we did, the preliminary report we did in March, is due to the adjustment of the planning revenue related to the new revenue standard, PS 3400. Funds have been received for the planning applications, but based on the standard, the revenue is not recognized until the benefits of the service have been transferred to the payor. So the funds are recorded on the balance sheet as an unearned revenue account and will be recognized as revenue once that the benefits have been transferred. So we have received the money, but it's just not sitting as a revenue item on the financial statements. The other item was an insurance claim based on accrual for the insurance claim based on reports from the insurance company, and staff felt it prudent to make an accrual based on that information. And in note 9 of the financial statements, you'll see that there's 2 reserves and a deficit position. And that is caused by insufficient amounts allocated from general contributions. And in some cases, some projects have been over budget. And also contributing to the deficit is that we used to have a longer lead time for the larger purchases. So if we bought a fire truck, Director Morale would order it 1 year and it wouldn't come in for a period of time. So we always had a lag in that time frame. That has shortened so that all the stuff that we've ordered have come in and the previous year plus the current year have come in the same year. So we've lost that time lag. And the transfer is being recommended to bring these 2 reserves into a positive position. And in the case of fleet and equipment, there's also a difference between the current year budgeted amount and the inflows into the reserve. So we want to make sure it's in a positive position at the end to start this year. And if the resolutions to move the funds around are approved, the draft financial statements will be adjusted for those amounts before they're published. And if you have any more questions.
Are there any more questions for our Deputy Treasurer? You okay? Going once. Gonna read a resolution, I think. Have to do your job too? Just kidding. I'm just kidding. So moved by Councillor Edwards and seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that the 2024 audited consolidated financial statements for the Township of Muskoka Lakes attached as Appendix 2 be approved, and that the 2024 operating deficit for the 2024 fiscal year prepared in accordance with the Municipal Act of $320,848 be transferred from the tax stabilization reserve, and that $250,000 for the Fire and Emergency Services Reserve Fund and $425,000 for the Fleet and Equipment Reserve Fund be transferred from the Tax Stabilization Reserve, and that the Director of Financial Services, Treasurer, be given the authority to amend the approved 2024 audited consolidated financial statements as presented to include these changes. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Well done.
Thank you.
We are moving to Public Works. We have a report from the Director of Operational Services. Director Cochi, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee. So the report before you is an update on the Windermere traffic calming request. So as you recall, there were a couple of resolutions that were approved at this committee, and those resolutions were submitted to the District of Muskoka. So to follow up, we did reach out to the district, and they have got back to us and indicated that they will be doing some studies this summer regarding the traffic in Windermere, and that will include doing an analysis of the traffic amount, the traffic speeds, and doing some warrant analysis for an all-way stop. So as part of the report, we've also included some examples of traffic calming measures. So there's speed humps, chicanes, traffic circles, chokers, lane narrowing, radar speed signs, child slow down silhouettes, and flexible delineators that narrow the road so the traffic will be forced to slow down. One of the recommendations that the district has provided to us is possibly converting Gulf Road to a one-way, which would limit the traffic going onto Windermere Road, and also change the configuration of that intersection. So the district will be looking at that as part of their study. And if that comes out as a recommendation, we'll bring that back to this committee at a future date. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions? Councillor Robert. Sorry, Councillor Edwards. It's the chair.
Just
And I rehearsed that.
The reason. The reason for the one-way street, is that a good idea? Because you're putting all the traffic then down in around the beach where there's kids.
again, through you, Mr. Chair, that came from the district. They're going to look at that as part of their study to see how that would affect. It's more at the intersection, the turning movements at the intersection. So if it's one way, you wouldn't have people turning left out of that intersection.
But you'd
So
have
only people could turn right into it. So
I realize that, but then you're putting everything down by the marina, making a right turn and coming up where all the kids run across for ice cream and that.
right, and
No,
that's something that we'll have to look at.
Okay, I'll talk.
If that does come out of the analysis.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I have one question through me. Why is this a district road? And why aren't we able to make this decision ourselves? As far as I can tell, this does not meet the criteria of a district road when district roads were actually thought of. It's a dead end. It ends in our town. And this to me seems almost akin to Huntsville having to go to the district to ask to close the main street to run their Santa Claus parade. It just doesn't meet the definition of a district road anymore. So I'm going to leave that with you and not ask for an answer because I know it's not answerable yet. But I think that Councillor Edwards' question on moving this one way could potentially be a serious issue for the town. And I'm not sure why we're not making that decision as opposed to the upper tier, when my fundamental belief is that this road does not meet the criteria for being a district road anymore. So I'll just leave that with you for the study. I've left the pin in the hand grenade and it's just tossed to the grenade.
Thank you for that.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, sir. There's no resolution. That was for information. I will now call on our Director of Human Resources to talk about our volunteer appreciation. So.
Darren.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Morning, Chair Burry and members of the committee. Before you is a report to adopt a volunteer appreciation policy and include associated costs in the draft 2026 budget. In March, committee directed staff to research and provide suggestions for a volunteer appreciation event or program. Historically, Muskoka Lakes has recognized volunteers in a variety of ways over the years. In reviewing other municipalities to gain an understanding of approaches, and awards approach is common, but perhaps less inclusive. The policy has been drafted to suggest a biannual event to build community spirit and more broadly express gratitude towards volunteers by being open to all volunteers, regardless of role or organization, and placing an emphasis on collective thanks rather than individual recognition. Committee may wish to adjust the approach or the frequency and should provide general direction on the budget. For example, costing was outlined for a daytime reception, lunch, or dinner. So happy to help with any questions.
That's terrific. Thank you. Are there questions? Now it's really Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. In the report, there's a mention of a working group to be set up. Can you elaborate on the working group and what their deliverables would be?
Yeah, I'm happy to, through you, Chair. The suggestion is that the working group would run the event. So that would be their sole purpose. They would be struck to run the event under the budget established by council.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, please.
The working group would be a mixture of both staff and community leaders, or not?
Correct. Yeah. The suggestion is council, staff, and community.
Okay.
Counselor Kelly. Demoting you.
Thank you, and through you. Just two comments, and I was going to follow up or ask a question about the working group. Councilor Roberts asked it. One of the issues is that the people who volunteer to be on that working group are probably among a very small group of people who are also the ones to be recognized in the volunteer appreciation. So we may have to, I don't know, work around that or work through that. I don't think it's a big deal, and I'm not suggesting there would be a conflict, but they're likely going to be there doing the work and not volunteering that they might be the ones who get the recognition. That's number one. Number two, I like starting out on a biannual basis. I think that's a great place to be. I think we should maintain the flexibility to move it to an annual if the thing is a hit. And if there's groups, it's going to take a long time to work through all the volunteers because we have such a diverse group of towns and hamlets and crossroads with people in every one of them that give back. And so, start it every other year is a great idea, but it wouldn't surprise me if after one or two of them, we bring it to annual. That's it. Thanks. Good work.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, your worship, that we don't want to miss anybody. And we do have so many groups in so many places doing. I mean, we know that our township would not run without volunteers. Councilor Roberts.
Thank you for the second question. And yes, I agree with what you just stated. The nucleus of our community really does drive our community spirit. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties with my glasses. Can you remind me what the amount, budgeted amount would be?
So for the budget, this is sort of trying to get it into, so the biggest community centers hold 200 seated for dinner. So we did sort of like a number of 200. And if we did a daytime reception, $30 per person, $6,000. A lunch, $60 per person, $12,000. Or in a dinner, $100 per person, $20,000.
I think that's a fair place to start, and having an understanding of where it lands. In the kind of 2005 range, it was just like a ceremony, but it did pick on individuals, and they got plaques, and so it was a kind of an after dinner thing. There's so many ways to do it, and to do it right and to make sure that we get everybody is, I think, is more important. But I think we can allocate some budget over a couple of year period and figure that out, and let the committee, that if it's got the right representation, as the mayor points out, they'll come up with a pretty good plan. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. I think to the mayor's point, and I think to what you'd said earlier as well, I think it's really important that we recognize that large group of volunteers. This is not an elective sort of scenario where people, put in a ballot and, hey, Gary wins from over there and Mary doesn't, et cetera, et cetera. I think, there are so many volunteers, as we talked here about, that perhaps in the first 2-year tranche, if you will, that we recognize all of the groups. And that could be, it could be an outdoor thing, it could be a barbecue, it could be whatever, but, whether it's in any town in our 800 square kilometers, to your point, there's so many volunteers that we would be doing as much harm as good by acknowledging those. I get the mind dizzies on who there would be. So perhaps after that first recognition of a 2-year period, then it could be distilled down to a more elective sort of ballot, kind of make it a contest, call whatever. But I think let's not forget what we're trying to do here was to acknowledge those volunteers, and in fact, to prompt more volunteerism. So.
Yeah. Councilor Bosemouth.
Thank you, and through you. And this is just a very technical small point in the language of the corporate policy, but in 3.3, it uses the word capital T township. In other words, it says continue in time and service in the township, to the township rather. And I think a more appropriate word, capital T with township implies the corporation of the township of Muskoka Lakes. And what they're really doing is giving responsibility. They're contributing time and services to the community. I would just suggest changing that word before we approve it.
That's a good catch.
Good catch. Thank you. Yep.
Anything else? I do have, funny, I have a resolution for you. Moved by Councillor Kent and seconded by Councillor Bosemarth. Be it resolved that the recommendations for volunteer appreciation and volunteer appreciation policy described and attached as Appendix 1 to the report HR-2025-003 be approved, and that committee requests the mayor consider including the associated costs in the draft 2026 budget for consideration. A comment? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you very much. I think I was one of the individuals around the table that really was hoping that we could get something like this. And in its current format, I'm reluctant to support it. I'm thinking that the volunteers that are going to show up to this are already very, very busy people. And I know just from my experience within the communities, people from Torrance or from Milford Bay don't like to come to Port Carling. It's pretty a funny thing, but it's very true. So it's too far. Well, I've heard it in Milford Bay. It's too far to go to Port Carling. So anyways, the volunteers, I would suggest that we have rather it's a significant budget, that maybe we give the budget a minimum budget to council hall board advisors, and they could give meetings within that hall board to promote that hall board. Because I can think of Raymond. We have a nucleus of four people on the board, but we're not getting more volunteers. Where in Milford Bay it's just booming.
So I'm going to jump and make a suggestion that I think that the committee that we put together, that will include council and staff and some volunteers, will figure out the most appropriate way of dealing with our entire volunteer community, which may be not one big event, it may be several smaller events. And I think that we should leave it to the committee to do the work of the committee, recognizing that what we're trying to do here is have a policy, which I think doesn't talk about anything specific for an event. And we're asking that the mayor and us as council consider appropriating a small stipend to the 2026 budget so that we'll be able to do something. And I think, Councillor Roberts, that the committee will be able to gather the nuance of our many distinct small communities within our small community to get the best overall implementation to recognize. I mean, the issue is to recognize our volunteers and not get bogged down with the who wants to go where and do what when. And I actually think that if we let the people that are going to be charged with doing the job do the job, as opposed to us trying to do that, I think we'll get a better implementation all around. Carry on.
Oh, thank you. I left my mic on. So I would like that committee report before the budget.
Well, I think we can allocate the budget before the committee report and then figure out how the budget gets allocated.
The committee, because I sort of don't take the same position as you.
You could be on the committee.
Pardon?
You could be on the committee.
Well, I would be on the committee, but I think we need a report before it comes to approve what $12,000 or whatever. So, all right, thank you.
Is that okay? We're gonna deal with the motion.
Yeah.
I think.
We're still looking for the budget range, dinner, lunch, daytime.
Yep.
And sorry, Ms. Lehman's point, you could put in a budget amount. I do want to note that the budget is different this year. It is the mayor's budget. So the mayor will be selecting the amount that goes in. So this resolution is requesting that something be considered by the mayor in the budget. So just because of the strong mayor legislation that has come into force and effect and been thrust upon us, I just want to point that out, that everything here is just requesting that the mayor put something into the budget.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, I was gonna suggest that the 20,000, that was the other, if we don't use it, then we can drop it back, but let's put enough in it. The volunteers are worth more than that. Thank you.
I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Do you want to go up, or I'm happy to have you stay here? Okay, if we're, no, I think that's better, just all around. Okay. Director Proshi.
Thank you, through you.
Sure.
Thank you. The report before you today outlines the potential amendments to the council expense and remuneration policy as requested by committee at the April 16th meeting. Based on the request for review, staff analyzed training and conference attendance, additional per diems for attendance at in-person training and conferences, as well as accommodation coverage for attendance at council and committee meetings. While all of the options have been outlined in the report, staff are only recommending a change to the conference and training attendance and an additional per diem with the parameters provided by committee at the April 16th meeting. I will also note that as per normal process for any policy amendment, should the recommendation be passed as is today, it would come into force and effect as soon as it is ratified by council. If committee wanted to delay the enactment of any of the changes, an amendment to the recommendation would be required today. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So I'm fine with section A and section B relating to training and conferences. Section C, I think it needs, just for optics, I think it needs a bit of a reset emotionally. I think that what needs to understand here, and I'm probably not in support of this, and yet I'm one of the people that can't be here in those winter months. The point of this, though, and I think it somehow has gotten mixed up here or missed, is that when we're first elected in that new term, and some of the special interest groups are quick to point out that, hey, listen, you knew what the job was when you applied, if you will, and got elected. My point, though, is that once you are elected, you sit around this table, and then the mayor picks you to be the chair of a particular committee, of which we have 3, one of which the mayor is the chair. If you're the appointed chair through the mayor of planning, as my friend to my right, who doesn't have a place in the winter, what is that person to do except be out of pocket? And I'm not making an appeal for him in particular, but I think the scenario needs to be rethought. And my suggestion would certainly be to redline something that says that were you to be selected, were a councillor to be selected as a chair of one of the 2 committees, if you will, then there could be, should be, would be, because you have to be here to chair that meeting. Essentially,
Yep.
You know, I've tried to electronically do it when I was the chair of GNF, and it's not easy. It doesn't work for.
No, you cannot chair a meeting.
Exactly. So I would suggest, if my peers would be so inclined, to alter the wording such that it's isolated to and in recognition of a chair designation. Unfortunately, that might mean that the mayor says next time, hey, listen, I'm not going to pick somebody who's from an island. But we have many seasonal residents. Some 80% of our taxpayers are seasonal. So I think to be sensitive to that issue, were you to be a chair designate, that I think there should be, and whether it's $200 a night or $100, and it's just it's a recognition. I just think we need to talk about that. That's where I would, because I won't support this the way it is.
Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, I am on sort of a close alignment with Councillor Zavitz. I support A, I support B. I see a huge distinction between compensation for the job, remuneration for the job, which is what I think A is all about, and B, which I look at as education and career development, and I think is more like expense reimbursement than anything else, and that's how I'm comfortable with that. I have no appetite to approve. I mean, I approve C because it's recommended no, and I would go with the recommendation of staff that we not approve C, but for a couple of reasons that I'd like to get out. Number one, I don't see anywhere in here, maybe I missed it, that we're talking about changes that don't come into effect until next term. And to the extent we're not talking about matters that don't come into effect next term, we're actually talking about adjustments to our own pay and compensation in the moment. And quite frankly, I realize we look at, I think we're actually got a statutory obligation under the Municipal Act to do adjustments once per term for salary, but it's always done forward thinking. So it's not actually an adjustment to our own salary. That would, it seems to me, put us in a conflict. So I can't see that this is talking about this term or next, but I double down on my sort of, this is in the negative, my support for not approving C if we're actually talking about something that would take effect tomorrow. Number two, we ran and we were elected, and Councillor Zavitz raises a good point. You don't know when you get elected whether or not you're going to get saddled with additional responsibility that might take you away from home mid-year or make it difficult to do your job by Zoom. I appreciate that, and I hadn't thought of that. But I still find it a challenge to consider any kind of stipend for overnight accommodation on, I mean, there's an equity issue here. To me, we end up compensating certain councillors differently and more than others. And quite frankly, I don't believe we should be doing that. I don't believe that's right. If we wanted to do this kind of adjustment and make it forward thinking next term, we'd leave it to the voters to decide in 12 months or 18 months or whenever the next vote is, whether they want to vote for somebody who has an additional expense associated with the accommodation or not. Still wouldn't support it, but at least it would be a different argument, less likely to, run afoul of. I just have a hard time making a decision on something that in fact would impact any of us or some of us or all of us immediately.
Councillor Roberts, then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. It's good food for thought. My colleagues have brought up. I do know that the chair of the planning, the chair of general finance, and the chair of committee of adjustments, should be, they do a special role for the township. It's more than myself, with not being on those, being the chair. And I think that role should be recognized and compensated differently, whether it's a raise in compensation, a flat X dollars. But I think that's what we should consider, because I wouldn't support it as it's written right now, but I'm thinking that we've got to recognize those three roles as being, senior leaders.
Councillor Edwards.
Yes, and going through this on a unlimited national and provincial conferences, and that somebody can get on and just be traveling all over the country. I'm not for that. Training, yes, I can see that if there is training. I believe the year before I ran, a lot of people went out, I think it was Vancouver, the councillors. And it ended up, I don't think any of them got back on. So you have to be very, very careful when you're looking at this, because like I say, And I'd like to know what the letter was from our Muskoka. You said come in last night. I didn't see.
Yeah, our Muskoka said they're not in favor of the accommodation. So they're
assumed
they're
they
supporting
were.
the staff recommendation.
Yeah. So, and but like I say, and then unlimited, I think even if you increased it by one conference per term, but not unlimited. As part of it.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I'll also note that the Ratepayers Association long ago supported the staff recommendation of no. It's just our Muskoka came in very late, about 10:59 last
I
night.
realize that. Okay, thank you. But I
So I would say there's a fair amount of ratepayer support for the staff recommendation of no accommodation.
Yeah, and that because like I say,
Our director, our clerk would like to have a word and I would entertain that.
Thank you. Just to clarify, the direction that was provided at the April 16th meeting did note unlimited national and provincial attendance, conferences at national and provincial conferences. However, when staff drafted the policy, we did include that it had to be hosted in Ontario. So it can be a national conference, but it does need to be in Ontario. If it was outside of Ontario, it would have to come to this table to get approved.
Your worship.
Thank you, and through you. And just to Councillor Edwards' point on that, it is budget limited. All right, we set an annual budget, and you can travel all you want, but there's a cap, and the cap is we run out of money. I actually prefer Councillor Edwards' approach, I think, of a hard cap per councillor, because otherwise we leave the juggling up to staff all the time to figure out who's already gone to one, who's gone to two, who should go next, you know, where should they go, and oops, we're out of money. I think put a fixed number on it, 2 unit, I don't know whatever works, 2 or 3 per year and per councillor. No more than X number of councillors at any meeting for quorum reasons, and a fixed budget for the total sum of all participation. And I think it works a little easier than this unlimited notion.
And I think that that's actually what happens in the body of this. But the unlimited was just to say that, you know, if you've been to one AMO conference, you can, if you meet all of the other criteria, you can go to another one, where our current doesn't allow that. You're kind of allowed to go to AMO twice in your four years or whatever that, and those being the national conferences that are Ontario based. And I think this is trying to capture some of the Federation of Canadian Municipality stuff that we have not in past attended. And I actually think that if you look at the details of the recommendation and with A and B, it gets to exactly your points. And it's and I mean, we're all counselors, and we have to have some discretion and some accountability for our actions. But I actually think it's well written, Your Worship.
And thank you. And through you, did have one question that came up last night when I read it. The way it writes, or the way it's written, there's sort of a prohibition on the attendance of councillors at certain meetings under certain conditions. But can a councillor not still go on his own hooks?
Yeah.
So it's a prohibition of paying for it rather than a prohibition of attendance.
Thank you. Through you. The policy doesn't speak to whether somebody could pay for it themselves. I would look to that no more than 5 members of council should attend any one event, training, or conference. So it does speak to that. But paying for themselves and attending a conference, the policy currently is silent on that.
Councillor Edwards.
And looking at C, the $150 a day to attend a conference. Most of the conference has their meals and everything like that. You can charge for meals and everything. I think that's excessive. It's like double dipping because you're getting a salary for being on council, and then to go to a thing and it's like rewarding. So you might have somebody signing up for them just to get the $150 a day.
I'd hope not, but We need to bring this to a conclusion one way or another. Councilor Roseworth?
I don't think you've read the resolution, have you?
I have not read the resolution.
All right, so we have not been following our protocol of the meeting where we have
Yeah.
question period and vote. So perhaps you could read the resolution and I will give you my thoughts.
Moved by Councillor McIntyre and seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that the committee approved the amendments identified in sections A and B to the council remuneration and expense policy outlined in Appendix 1 to report LS-2025-022 regarding training and conference attendance and per diems. Councillor Bolesworth.
Thank you. I am a little conflicted talking about number C because I'm one of those people who would be remunerated. I'm also the chair. So any discussion on that or anything that we approve now, I think it should be for implementation for next term. But I've sort of been ambivalent about this. But Councillor Zavitz's point, I think, is a very valid one. And so that leads me more to give some consideration for it. It's not everybody that's going to get it, but it's somebody who has extra duties and is essentially required to be here, but doesn't have a place to stay. I think we're talking about reimbursement expenses here. We're not talking about compensation. I would also point out that the members of the Committee of Adjustment do get paid for their extra day. And any of our councillors who come to extra meetings don't get paid. So, the chairs have their chair meeting once a month. We have another meeting once a month. There's no consideration for that, and there shouldn't be. But I think the 150-day per diem when you're out of town, plus remuneration of expenses, direct, only things that you paid out of pocket within the travel expense plan. I think that's quite legitimate, and therefore I would support it as it's read. And I also think that A and B, you could move B to the next term. So to address the mayor's concern, because this is a form of compensation that we already have in another committee. And so, but I would like A to be, become immediate. It's all constrained by money anyway. So it's not as if we're not creating a budgetary problem. I don't think there should be limits. People only have so much time to go to so many. It's a fair amount of work. It's a fair amount of effort. And I think it enhances the capabilities of councillors who want to go that effort. So I would like to say A gets approved right now. B and C could be delayed till next term. C, if we're going to consider it, should be delayed till next term. For the mayor, the points the mayor has made. So those are my comments.
Your worship.
Thank you, and through you. And I don't want to get hung up on this too much, but I'm rereading section A. And there are 2 locations, maybe 3, where it restricts the attendance by councillors by saying that removing any restriction in the amount of municipal conferences and training held that may be attended. And later on, removing the restriction a councillor could attend. But I think we're really just talking about attending at the expense of the municipality, if I'm not mistaken. I would think a councillor is always free to go, subject to the quorum rules, or maybe at the mercy of, or at the peril of breaching the quorum rules. If someone feels, that they should have been able to go to more conferences, they could have, but they would have to pay for it themselves and still be mindful of quorum. I'm just a little concerned that we're shutting off the opportunity. If somebody's determined they really are going to get a benefit from this and they're willing to pay for it, they can go.
Yeah, we shouldn't restrict that. We
I
should
just think that's what this does. I'm not sure this accomplishes that. That's all I'm leaving open.
Should we send this back to staff?
For you, I'm happy
to defer it a month. I would just want some direction. So the policy's been crafted based on the direction that was provided at the April 16th meeting. So I would just require some further direction on where you'd like some changes.
Counselor Savitz?
Thank you. And through you, and to that point, so the way the resolution is read, as you just did, it absolutely doesn't refer to section C.
Right.
So by virtue of that, it's excluded. And so it would be, we're not even voting on it. So it's not even, so to your point, if you're going to defer it a month, does that also then does C get deferred for further discussion a month from now?
Thank you, through you. It'd be the entire matter would be deferred, so everything could come back. I will just note one thing to the mayor's point, that if somebody wanted to pay for themselves to go, one thing that in conversations with other area clerks when I was developing this report, one of the concerns that was raised by another municipality was the fairness, whether somebody could afford to pay for themselves or not, and that somebody might be getting more benefit because they financially could do it more. So I just wanted to point that out because that was something that came from another area municipality.
Counselor Edwards? Roberts?
He
You both can answer.
He did that on purpose.
I know.
Yeah, just for direction, I would like to, if my colleagues agree, to come back about the recognition of those key roles that we asked 3 councillors to participate in and commitment. So I don't, as Councillor Zavitz was indicating, just wonder what the appetite for that thought is.
Mm-hmm. Counselor Bosworth? Your mic.
Yes, thank you. I would agree with Councillor Roberts. But my question relates to, I just realized the reimbursement for nightly accommodation shall not exceed 200. Is that part of our expense policy? Because that's pretty hard to do today.
That was something that we discussed internally at length, what the appropriate amount would be. So whether we wanted to leave it open and it's just that one night would be covered, or whether we wanted to put an amount on it. The amount it doesn't come from our expense policy. The amount just came from a general average based on the time, like trying to average out time of year and all of that. The number could be changed, but no, it didn't come from a current policy.
But of course, you're not recommending we approve it anyway. So
Correct.
new point. Thank you.
So we do have a motion in front of us, which we could defer. Straw poll, defer. Okay. What do we need to do to defer this back to staff?
I can just do something to postpone it. I just need to know why. Why are we?
We're postponing it because we're not comfortable with the entire policy as recommended. So
What changes would you like to see?
How do I? I think we've talked about it. I think there's. Yep.
We can certainly, I've drafted up a resolution to postpone the matter to the next meeting. Just based on the conversation, we could definitely bring back a report trying to summarize everything that was talked about here. But I don't know at this time whether staff have enough direction to bring back an amended policy, because I'm hearing some conflicted and some same potential amendments. So maybe it's time, or to give time for committee to digest the report and potentially look at the same report again. I'm just not sure of the changes at this time.
Councillor Savitz?
I think it's through you. I think what I'd like to see personally is a resolution revision that acknowledges C and defers this for a month, but does very specifically reference those key, what's the word? Elective, selective positions as dictated by the mayor. So any chair position, and uniquely only a chair position. You don't have to give me money to come up here in March and I'm a counselor.
I'm not expecting that, wouldn't be expecting that. This policy would be very specifically to acknowledge the chair aspect, that management piece. Am I wrong? I mean, and so I think it needs to be crafted in there.
Okay, that's one opinion. Your CAO, David?
Thank you. I think it might be helpful just trying to help I've made some notes of it, some of the feedback I'm hearing, and I think would capture some of the changes, but there's still, I think, are a few question marks. And there's a lot of, obviously with 3 sections or numerous issues, it's sort of hard to break it down. But if you go by section, the comments I've heard on section A, and that's with respect to conference attendance, we've heard a number of comments that it should be made clear that counselors would be able to attend on their own. I think that's the intent of the policy, but it's not explicit. Staff could certainly add that comment, subject to quorum, that counselors could attend. I think there's some support for that. There was a question, and this is where I'm not entirely clear. I think it was just 1 or 2 comments made. Should it be unlimited or should it be a cap? I think several counselors made a comment that perhaps a cap is more appropriate than unlimited. So that would be one outstanding question. With respect to section B, I think there's general support for the per diem, although I think the direction was that that be applicable to the next term. Section C, again, I think there was general support, or sorry, I think the comments we've heard on section C is for the next term, and that it be applicable to only the chairs. Appointed chairs of advisory committees is the direction I've heard. So I think if that, summarize the changes we want, we could certainly defer that in a resolution and come back, or you could put that in a resolution to come back to council and save the month too, if we'd like. But I think the one outstanding question, again, was that I didn't hear sort of a consensus on was whether unlimited attendance was desired for a term of council, or whether there should be a cap, because I think it was Councillor Edwards and Your Worship who raised that question.
I think I heard cap on budget, but if you want to go on your own ticket and you're not violating quorum, I'm not sure that I'm not sure we can even regulate that, frankly, would be my view. Councillor Boseworth?
I'd like to make a suggestion that we, on those points that we, on point A, that we don't limit. There is a limit, because if you've got some people who are keen on visiting this, they can't do it unless they can't exceed. There were some rules about how many they can attend if somebody else wants to attend. In other words, you get slipped down at the bottom of priority if you start attending a lot. And so we already have a regulator in there. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. So I would suggest we leave A as is, with perhaps the clause that I don't need to know that we need to explicitly say you can't go on your own, because we've already got a requirement for.
No, I think we explicitly need to say you can go if you want to go on your own.
Sorry. I would suggest we don't need to talk about it, but if we want to put it in, I don't think it matters. It will make it clear. On the per diem, I think I would support that for next term. And on number C, I think that should be revised to say chairs would be reimbursed and nobody else.
Yeah, you're conflicted on that, but not for next term.
Yeah, that's why I'm not conflicted, because it's for next year.
So
I would suggest, Chair, that we revise the resolution and pass it today based on that.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, I'd like to see it and that come back, check and see, because there was only a very few municipalities that did the per diem and everything else like that. And we must remember that we gave the next council a raise over and above what they have. Some of the ratepayers are not happy with it. And that, so I think that, we should be looking at it, and I think we should investigate it some more, is my thing, but I would not be supporting it the way it is. Thank you.
Do you have a feel?
I mean, obviously we'll follow the will of everyone here, but I'm actually ready to vote on it, to be honest with you. I think everybody knows that, or doesn't know that there are essentially independent and can make decisions to go to conferences on their own. I don't know how you manage to quorum issues. If people are just showing up willy-nilly, we get all decide we're going, and then what do we do? So there's an issue there. My biggest issue at this point, I can support this as recommended. A, yes, B, yes, C, no. And all of which I think that needs to be prospectively focused on next term. The only issue for me is trying to manage to a budget. Is it an annual budget or a per term budget? I forget what it is. Trying to manage a whole, whom on staff is going to say no and yes and maybe and keep track. I mean, I don't want to make a full-time job out of.
But the clerk's office
managing
has done that in the past.
Okay, that's fair.
That has been one of the things they have done.
All right. So then essentially I'm prepared to go with it. If we need to address the issue of chairs and additional compensation, we have the luxury of 14 or 15 more months before the next election. We can take the time to do it then. Because even if we tried to address that today, I have no idea what kind of money we're talking about.
Right. Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, through you. I think if we are going to, here we are voting, if we are to do that, there are conflicts around this table right now, right? We have a chair, we have the mayor, both would be essentially voting on something. Now, the mayor, God forbid, the next election, there's a mayor that comes from Toronto.
So to be clear, there are no conflicts because we're doing it for next term.
Well, that's my point. Thank you. That's my point. But if we vote here today, we're going to vote C away. And yet the next mayor, whoever that might be, has that right. It's his privilege, her privilege to select all of the chairs. So you could have a committee of adjustment, GNF, and planning all be seasonal residents who can't get to their cottages for 6 months. And so we're completely ignoring that aspect. There's no favoritism here. And this is not part of an income. It's simply recognition of their responsibility. You know what happens, right? The new mayor says, hey, none of you are going to be chairs. I'm not going to incur that expense. God forbid that would happen. But so I just think in the overall spirit of openness and candor, we need to continue to have this dialogue. I'd hate to vote on this and have this thing voted down and it's dead.
Councillor Bosemore?
It was really a question for the mayor. I think you said you'd vote on this, but as long as it takes impact next term. I see. Because I'd be happy to vote on it, frankly, today.
Councillor Edwards?
As is.
Yep.
And we can, the point that Councillor Zabit is raising, we can deal with later.
Correct. Councillor Edwards?
One of the problems I have with this is A4, a restriction on the attending training and that. How do you do training for a council when you have to have less than quorum, like you have 5? And that training should be for all council, even if we have to send a staff member and that. But training for council should be open to everyone so that they get the same training, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that policy should be changed. And that for, like I said, have the staff member attend. It was the last watershed up in Huntsville. I did not go because I was trying to stop having a quorum.
Yeah, Director Peroshi.
Thank you. And that is a good point. I think the intent of the policy was that the training sessions would be third-party training sessions. So if we were hosting a training session here, you are correct. If we were hosting a training for council, it would be a council meeting. And if we were doing it like we do once a year, or once a term, we get together with all of the area municipalities and we have a joint meeting and a joint training. So I think the intent of this is that it's a third party or outside of the organization. So it'd be a training that an association might put on, or
that AMO might put on or something like that. That's not specifically a conference, that it's just a one-day training or something like that. We can put in some language, so we could call it conferences, third-party training sessions, membership, but I believe that's the intent of the policy. We would certainly still have internal trainings and they would be run as council meetings.
That's all.
Yep.
What about say an MLA annual general meeting that we're all invited to?
Thank you, through you. I don't believe there's any cost to that and I wouldn't classify that as a training session.
Okay, thank you. So we can go.
I will not comment.
Mayor Kelly, did you have a further comment?
Director Procy summarized it perfectly. Thanks.
So I can call the question. If everyone's ready. Councillor Boseworth.
I would like you to call the question with the revision to B and C being implemented next term.
Do we need to change the resolution?
Amendment that I don't listen
Why don't we take do you want 5 or 10 minutes?
5 minutes.
5-minute recess while we deal with an amendment. Okay, thank you, councillors. We do have an amendment. And I'm going to read that now. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to include the following at the end of the paragraph with the following amendments to section A. 2. Members of council are permitted to pay for and attend training and conferences at their own expense, save and except more than 5 members of council attending the same event. And that the approval of the changes to section B as identified in the policy shall not come into force and effect until the beginning of the next term of council. And that committee approve the amendments identified in section C to the council remuneration and expense policy outlined in appendix 1 to report LS 2025-22 with the following amendment: that the number so that the member of council be required to attend meetings in person as an appointed chair of a committee of council. So what that's saying is that an appointed chair of a committee of council would be able to expense one night of hotel accommodation in order to be in person at the meeting. And that the approval of the changes to section C as amended and as identified in the policy shall not come into force until the beginning of the next term of council. And that was moved by Councillor Zavitz and seconded by Councillor Bosemuth. Is there any discussion to the amendment? Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you, concur, other than the reference to the meeting cycle. So in fact, when you come up as a chair, you're coming for 2 days of meetings currently, right? We have a Wednesday, Thursday. So I guess that resolution is suggesting
one night,
that Wednesday night, as long as that doesn't change in the next term of council to a Monday and a Wednesday. So I don't know, but that's, I mean, we changed it in the first term of council, so.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think we're fine with that. Councillor Roberts.
I apologize. I've just thought of something else. If a counselor is attending a conference, is that person not representing the township of Muskoka Lakes? For being there, and to carry on that, is that, shouldn't that be approved, even if they're paying it for themselves, that we want them to represent us? So just think of a rogue counselor attending the session. Just thoughts.
I'm not sure we can get all the what ifs.
Okay.
But thank you.
Be aware.
Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, I might be slow. I still don't know what I'm voting on. And if I could have it on the screen, maybe to read it, I think I might understand it better. Or you could read it again, but.
No, I don't want to read it again.
Yeah, good.
I think we can get a
quick summary. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll try that. If not, we'll just take a minute to get it on the screen because I'd have to send it over to Liz. But what this amendment is doing is that section A, which refers to the training and conferences, remains as is, with the inclusion that a member of council could pay for themselves to go to a conference unless we reach quorum. So if there's already 5 members going, they can't pay for themselves and go. Everything else remains the same, and that comes into force and effect this term. The next section is section B, which is the per diem. So per diem for attending a training or a conference, the $150. It remains as is, not changed, but won't come into force and effect until the next term. And then the following, or the final one, is section C. So that was the overnight accommodation. So this amendment is now including section C, so allowing an overnight accommodation. However, you've added in that a member of council would be required to attend the meeting in person if they're appointed as a chair of a committee of council. So they have to Councillor Zavitz's point, they would have to be a chair, so they have to attend here in person to chair the meeting. And again, that section would not come into force and effect until the next term of council.
So I think that actually captures everything that we talked about. Your worship.
Thank you, and through you again. And so the only one I'm focused on now is C. Is it sort of assumed that staff would support that now? Because we had a staff recommendation against supporting C with that modification, that amendment. Does that change it enough that we've covered off the issues staff had with section C?
I support the will of council.
Good job.
I am ready to call the question. All those in favor? All those against? That is carried. Oh, sorry. I did that wrong. All in favor of the main motion as amended? And opposed? That's 2. So that is carried. And then all those in favor of the main motion? Right. Oh, we're good. Okay. No more votes. I'm new. I was doing so good and then I got completely derailed. Okay, we're going to change gears and we've got the manager of parks, recreation and facilities on the Old Walkers Point Fire Hall. Well, Corey, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. Yes, today's report is in regards to the status of the Old Walkers Point Fire Hall and determining a path forward for the property. As committee is aware, at the April meeting, staff brought forward an update advising that the building after the winter was no longer in a safe working condition. And as such, staff would be undertaking 3 items as it relates to the building and property. The completion of a building condition assessment, seek land valuations of the property, and look at some potential other uses of the property itself. The results of those items can be found within the background of the report itself. From analyzing the results of those, staff have prepared 3 possible options to move forward with. We could look at selling the properties, and I say properties with the plural because there is actually 2. There's the small parcel that the building actually sits on, and then there is another larger parcel that kind of wraps around that property itself. We could look at demolishing the building and using the property and the road allowance across the road as a new public access point to the water, or we could look at repairing or rebuilding the building for the purpose of storage. In evaluating those, staff are recommending proceeding with option 1, which is to proceed with the sale of the properties themselves. The reason being the costs to repair or build new are pretty substantial. Additionally, as we look at some of our plans and strategies coming forward, it looks like if there is a need for storage, there could be some alternative uses for existing buildings in that capacity. As it looks to using the property as a potential park or public access point to the water, it is an opportunity, although limited in capacity. The topography of the road allowance wouldn't allow for a boat launch. So really the only opportunity would be for a small public dock that could be accessed that way. And finally, by selling the 2 properties, obviously we're aware of the capital infrastructure that is beyond us, and the sale and the earnings from those could help support revitalizing that infrastructure that we currently already have and prioritizing it. So with that, Chair, I'll turn it over to committee for questions.
Are there any questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. Okay, so I personally, when I look at this, can't imagine us as a township council doing anything but option 2. And I would say that having sat here for some 6+ years, we always protect, as a township, protect our accesses to water. So the notion that we would sell this.
Point of order. I don't think there's a question coming.
Well, there is a question coming.
Well, then Keep it to the question, councillors. I'm sorry, Chair, but Councillor Zaffis was giving an explicit opinion in the discussion, and we're supposed to be in question period. That was the point of order.
Presuppose what my question might be when I haven't even finished my.
Okay.
proposal, so I apologize.
Here,
I'm done.
no, I can read the resolution and then it's in order. So assuming there's no more questions, I will read the motion. Moved by Councillor Bosemorth and seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that committee approve option 1 outlined in staff report OPS-2025-30. Councillor Zavitz.
My question to staff would be, why option 1?
Mr. Moore.
Yes, through you, Chair. We certainly considered all the options through the analysis and results of the building condition assessments and the plans and strategies we currently have in place. As it speaks to the need for more public waterfront access, the Transportation Master Plan does speak to that. This particular location was not identified in that plan, and the particular area of Walker's Point in general was lower on that priority list. In terms of the uses, the only real use would be a public dock, which we felt was limited. We know that we have other recreational amenities that are requiring some investments and upgrades, and we felt that this could be the opportunity to help support those through the sale of the land. That wouldn't mean that the public access to the water here would be given up. That is still would be retained from the township and would still be our road allowance. It would just be the properties on the other side of the road.
Councillor Kent.
This is just an observation, but if we were to sell this, I think that it looks to me like the kind of thing that individuals who would like to create a landing, like a landing for islanders would scoop it up. Like they would build that parking lot and they would put a dock in that allowed for multiple parking spots. I think it would be an attractive, I don't know actually the water access there and I know what the water access is, but I don't know whether there are a lot of islands around. But if people were saw something like this on Lake Joe, it would be gone in 2 minutes. So I'm just saying it is an asset that I think has some value. And I think number 2 is not a bad option. The question is, it's really not a business necessarily that the township wants to be in, which is running.
But to be clear, the original road allowance is not part of the recommendation. It is not part of option 1. It's not being sold.
And I wasn't calling I was saying number 2.
So the original road allowance is not for sale.
Okay, so then you're saying nobody's going to want it. I think that if you don't sell it without the water access road allowance, it's of no value. Unless you want to make it into a demolition yard. Okay.
I'm going to go with Councillor Edwards first.
Yes, I would go with option 2. We could control it. We've done the same in Skelton Lake on Skelton Lake Road 2. We have a parking lot that's well away from the water. Then islanders can use it. And that I would never sell anything that the township had that they could use. And that we bought property next door. We bought another place so that we can control it. And that you look at public land and you try and buy it in 10 years or 15 years when the need's there, you won't afford it. And that I would keep it, demolish the building.
Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. So I think where I was going was the parking lot becomes just that. We tear the building down. We have a parking lot. We have access to the water, which is wonderful for, our environment and all of our constituents and the traveling public. My suggestion though would be not to put a dock there, not to locate anything other than a sign that welcomes canoers, kayaks, and SUPs, if you will. Park your car, get onto the lake, and now you've got access to Lake Muskoka. And isn't that wonderful? The dock, putting a dock there would just add a wrinkle to it that would be difficult to, all of a sudden people are putting chairs on the dock and they're saying, this would be, you can just vision the shoreline, put your boat in, put your kayak, whatever in, park your car, take an hour, you're done. And it's a wonderful access to water.
Councilor Rosemore?
Yeah, I'd just like to apologize for interrupting Councillor Zabit so abruptly. And I did want to hear what he was saying, which I think is what he just told us. Thank you.
Councilor Roberts?
Thank you, Chair. I think we should just keep the property, demolish the building. We're not making any more waterfront. Who knows, in 5 to 10 years, when we do the master plan in its full, that maybe this would be a gem. So we can sell it in the future if we wish.
Your worship.
Thank you. And through you, it's a question for Mr. Moore. Is the road allowance leading to water have any value if there is nowhere to park it to use it? I'm not sure that I can sort of visualize the setup. It seems to me we have a parcel that would be a location for cottagers there to build a garage or a shop, a shop or something. I don't know what they could use, and still have access to water that could be used by members of the public who otherwise don't have anywhere to go drop in a canoe. But it's not going to be useful if they can't park a car or carry a canoe to it.
Through you, Chair, kind of a difficult one to answer. I think that can all be up to the opinion of the person and the use that they're looking for. I don't know the road itself, whether there's opportunity for parking on the side of the road, etc. that way. So yeah, kind of a tricky one that way. I think it's up to people and their own opinions as to whether it be of value.
Councilor Kent?
I was just gonna say, as a follow-up, I agree that we should do option 2, demolish, and then, but with the caveat that I think we should go back and figure out what the alternatives of use are for that piece of land. Make the decision, we're gonna hold on to waterfront property. It's in a good location. There's not more of it being made, but maybe there are other alternatives that work financially better for the township and may meet some other needs of other constituents. So a follow-up would be my suggestion.
Councilor McIntyre? Choose it.
I do know that when people talk to me about this issue, they all agree on option 2. Nobody wants to sell it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rosemore?
Thank you, and through you to Mr. Moore. Have we spent much time thinking about be careful what you wish for? In other words, we sell it and then we get somebody who buys it and puts something in that we go, oh, why did we do that? Is there anything that is zoned for that could end up being something that would not be very acceptable in that community?
Through you, Chair, I think that's always a possibility. It's hard to restrict that. Have we put some thought into it? Yes, we have considered that as part of it, and we'd have to rely on the zoning of the property to help us determine the proper uses on it.
Rosemore?
If I could have a second question, is the larger property, which has road access, could it be sold and the small property be kept as a parking lot? And how much would that diminish the value? Although I suspect that's hard to answer.
Yes, it is a possibility, and staff explored that as well too. There is the opportunity to retain the smaller lot if there's a desire for a parking lot, and selling the other property. That is an option as well.
Councilor Edwards?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I would like to keep both properties. Yes, you can get access to the water, but then they'd be parking on the side of the road if you sold it. This way we have a legitimate parking lot. It's an asset. We've already paid for it. All we have to do is take the building down. So I would be definitely supporting number 2 with the councillors from Ward 8.
So I'm hearing as chair, a fair bit of consensus around option 2, demolish the building and keep the property. So we're going to amend this resolution to do just that. Selling properties is not good for municipalities. No. We're okay. Are we ready? Council? Council? Don't make me mad. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to strike out option 1 and replace it with option 2. Councillor Roberts? Option 2 is keep the property, demolish the building.
Is, okay, so, sorry, Chair, I'm just reading option 2. And it says demolish building and create a parking. So that's been struck out, creating the parking?
I think we're going to figure it out. Do you want to speak to that?
Sorry, thank you. I think if the draft resolution as amended was just to replace with option 2, I think the consensus or the chair was to replace it with option 2, but not construct the dock, but just leave it as parking.
Right.
I thought it was to come back with
Or
a
come back.
plan of what we're suggesting we do with it. Is it a park? Is it a swimming area? Is it, what is it?
I think option 2 lets us demolish the building and come back.
Because
I don't think we have to create a parking lot right away.
no, I think the concern is as the report is written, option 2 specifically states a new public dock should be constructed, and
No,
that
we
doesn't
don't
seem to
like
be
that.
the intent.
So we'll have to rewrite the amendment of the amendment. Have I told you guys I love wordsmithing by committee? It ranks up there with, sorry, chair's prerogative. I could wing this. No docks. I think it's bad form for municipalities to be selling properties. I'm gonna give some of that away. I know. I'm so. Okay, I'm gonna self-criticize. It's all my fault. I'm gonna make myself cry. I'm gonna make myself cry. You guys are not catch your squirrels. We're all okay. We're all in the same way. I'm gonna re-resolve. So moved by Councillor Edwards and second by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to strike out option 1 and replace it with option 2, and that the following paragraph be added, and that staff do not proceed with constructing a dock or a parking lot at this time, and report back to committee with further potential options. All those in favor? And that is unanimously carried. See, we got to it. And we have to approve the main motion as amended. All those in favor? And that too is carried. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Okay. Fire Chief Morrell, you're on.
Good
Look
morning.
at those epaulets. I want the, yep, those are colorful. I love them.
Thank you. You'll see more of that this afternoon. Through you, Chair, to committee. In front of you stands a report that talks to the current procedures and practices for activating our relief centers for the emergency management program for the township of Muskoka Lakes. In background, the chief, that's me, provided a verbal report about the March ice storm, and that report in its entirety is Appendix 1 of this report. At that time, it was requested by committee that the chief, that's me, return back to this committee and report back about relief centers, how exactly we consider when we're opening them, and what changes could we approach, and through some analysis into this report. Before I get into some of the detail that's in the report, it's probably best for me to say that this process was very informative for all of us in emergency management to see whether or not our current approach of activating the relief centers was adequate and comparative to people around us. So it was quite insightful when we went through the report. Some highlights of this report are that in Appendix 3, there were various options considered that have been brought to committee's attention. And some of those options considered criteria, timing, the duration of the relief centers, and staffing. And I now stand for questions because I understand that will be the heart of the matter today.
Thanks, sir. Councillor Zavitz.
Well, thank you. And through you to the chief. I guess where I'm hung up here, the words in your report, extreme weather event. I don't see any reference to the incredible weather event of the snow that happened in early December, which I know was almost a precursor to the ice storm in the early spring, late winter, where people were reeling from, a deluge of 4, 5, 6 feet of snow, lost power, et cetera. So, and then reeling from that to where we had the ice storm, which was just, carnage. Did you, for some reason, not include the snow, or anyway, just, I'll leave it at that. But to me, to many of our constituents, that was cathartic. Right?
Through you to council, or to committee, and to the councillor. Thank you for the question. There was some insights that were provided within the report that did refer to that winter storm event. I'm not sure if they quite made it into the report, but some of the staffing procedures that we used in that event, we actually amended them for this event. But second to that, the resolution that was provided to the fire chief did not ask for me to do a review on that winter storm event. So that more specifically addresses your question, I believe.
McIntyre? Councilor McIntyre?
You said that you consulted other, I'm assuming, community for their policies. How do we compare? What were the notable things? Is this report basically reflective of what those other people are doing?
Through you to the council, thank you for that question, because that's a great question. I would say that we compare quite favorably. In fact, if our goal is as a community to have a welcoming community spirit and be able to look after each other and support each other in these times, we're definitely meeting that criteria. We might be even opening our community centers more often than most communities. And if that's the will of council, then that's what we shall continue to do. Around us, most other communities, as noted in the report, basically business as usual, even though their communities were affected, and they referred a lot of people for relief to their already occupied staffed facilities that were already open. The only community that comes to mind that did a little bit more was Aurelia. And Aurelia became a support center for all of the surrounding areas. And they had showers and they had more supports that they brought to bear in order to make that occur. That being Red Cross. Red Cross actually helped them devise a plan for a proper shelter.
Okay.
I've got Councillor Kent.
Thank you, through you. The only thing that struck me when I read the report was that with the centers closing at 5 p.m., if the temperatures had been 10 degrees colder, and I saw that as it was above 0, 6, 7, would we have had to have availability to let people sleep there? Like, I mean, the people who did come needed the shelter, and didn't they need nighttime shelter? And I mean, maybe it was just temperature that allowed us to cut it off at 5, but easily it could have been -10 rather than 5. It's just,
Chief?
Yeah, through you to committee. Yes. So what was occurring during the entire event, and as noted in Appendix 1, is we were meeting, I believe we were meeting at least once a day as our emergency management control group, at least once a day. We were also meeting as emergency planners with the District of Muskoka and following suit with all of our partners. Yeah, there was two notions that were put on the table. If the demand produced itself, meaning if there were actual requests coming to us, we would amend or we would at least consider amending our hours of operation. That demand did not occur. We merely only received one phone call for opening the relief centers as they stood. The second big consideration early on was, can we staff what we're asking to do, and where is the tipping point? And by that I mean, we could only see the top of the iceberg. We could only see we're out of power today, and the outage map says we'll be on in 24 hours. As we all have come to learn, the outage map was
wrong,
full of veritas. No, it was probably the most frustrating thing to go every day and look and see that everything had been pushed back another 18 hours. So it was an event that we really couldn't stay in front of. And for us to do a professional shelter, that would take time. And we did have a conversation, myself, the HR manager, we had a conversation. I believe Corey also was involved, Corey Moore, with us talking to the Red Cross about their ability to provide a shelter. So we were prepared if things continued to escalate and become problematic. But as noted in my report, just to your other point in the question, you talk about sleeping at a facility. Only 2 of our facilities have been slated by this council to be like that, and only 1 would be approved under the Red Cross current standards, and that would be Port Carling. And that only really considers the fact that you can spread 2 different facilities as one. So some of the arena amenities would need to be included with the actual community center in order for Red Cross to help us support it. So really, if we did do an overnight accommodation, bringing in Red Cross would be the best bet. There would be a cost to that. There would be an agreement in place, and there would be, professional staffed shelter that would be offered. But again, we had no call for that, like no actual demand from the public.
CEO Pink.
Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to just add to that excellent answer, Fire Chief. But we had extensive messaging throughout, I think daily media releases. And in those, we also highlighted that should anyone need overnight accommodation, we provided links and contacts, as well as us. And again, we did not receive any demand or inquiries for it, nor did I believe any of those agencies that we provided the links for. So.
That's helpful. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, I was going to first offer the comment that CAO Pink did, that there was accommodation available, but none, to my knowledge, was taken up. So that was a bonus. Excellent job, excellent report, Chief Morrell. That's you, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I have a question though on Relief Center operation, page 3. There's a comment that Appendix 17 notes that custodians and hall board members are to staff the relief centers. However, that's not really been the practice. And there's a suggestion that there may be some upcoming amendments. Am I to assume that the amendments are to stipulate that township staff will be present and staffing each of the unit?
Through you
Yep.
to the mayor. Good morning, your worship, and that's
Morning.
you. Helps us stay completely polite. When you talk about staffing the facility, there's a couple things that have come up recently in a conversation with the treasurer, who is our direct contact with the insurance provider. When we look at having volunteers that are not employees occupy our building and run them, they need to still be supervised by a full-time member, and at least training has to be provided for them. So this was the way that we could communicate that with council about what that would look and feel like. In the past, when this, I think it was 2012, when the appendice was created, hall board members were envisioned to be a part of the process, but not the only part of the process. And I believe at that time there were more custodians serving all these facilities. Now there are far less custodians. We spread their work amongst many buildings. So if we operate many buildings, then we need more staff. So any changes that we make, you're correct. We would also envision using other staff, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of the development services, because if you actually look at which department gave us the most staff during the event, it was development services through bylaw, building, and planning.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up through you, Mr. Chair. Any chance we can get that policy changed before the next storm?
Are you going to ask when the next storm is? Because I think the chief may not have that at his disposal.
Yeah. Yeah, through you, we are actually going to have a meeting for our group. I believe it's coming up in September or October, and that'll be the opportunity for us to look at a policy change.
Yeah, thank you. I've got Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. And my questions, I basically had two. I'll keep it just two questions. One just came to light when you were speaking there, Chief Morrell. Have you and the emergency team spoke to Ontario Hydro to communicate to them how misleading their notifications are? Because I had constituents hanging, oh no, it's going to be up in 4 hours, where I could see wires down on the road that were going to take days to get up. So have you spoke to them, or has anyone followed up with these people to say, you got to be a little more realistic?
We can't solve that.
And I have a second question.
Through you to the councillor. Yeah, we've had detailed conversations, and it's a back and forth relationship in that it's very frustrating from both sides. They have what they call emergency management personnel that staff up for Hydro One when these things occur. And a lot of learnings occurred during the winter storm event. And a lot of those learnings actually had not been applied by the time the March ice storm had hit. So they openly went into it, knowing that a lot of things were not functioning properly. They're fully aware that their outage map needs a lot of updating. Where the real problem lies with Hydro One is they are very site specific. So in the fire world, we call that task oriented. They're very small in that they're a big operation, but they don't talk well on big events. So what they need to do, and they do realize this, is get a communication method so that we've been sent out to do the tree on the line, a crew of 4 are dealing with that, another crew of 4 are dealing with another tree on the line, sharing information. We're done with this tree on the line. We're coming down to help you at your tree on the line, digitally saving that information uploaded. They are looking at lots of software to help them with that approach. And I could tell you also, I had the pleasure of sitting in with the Bracebridge emergency management team as they actually hired a consultant to go through their after action review. And in that meeting, we were able to share a lot of insights with them, and Hydro was able to share their insights about their frustrations. And they have frustrations too, right? One of the things that came to light from that was the cell network was down a lot, and Hydro One relies heavily on the cell network. So we need to figure out from Bell, how are you guys going to help us with that approach moving forward? So the nice thing about after actions is we can get other people's perspectives in terms of the agencies that we work with, and we can hopefully correct things so it's better next time. But I could tell you from us as an emergency management group, we were doing everything that we could to try to figure out how to put the utility back online that was Hydro, and we were making amendments every day to help with the other utility problem that developed from this, which was the lack of ability to deliver propane to people because the lines were down across the road. A propane truck will not traverse them. So one of the things that was also left in the heads of everybody was that I cautioned everybody in the room that if this had happened in the summer and Muskoka Lakes was staffed or had all of the people that are normally here, I think the priorities might have changed in the complete event. Like there would have been a lot more focus to get people back up and running in our area. So both those winter storm events have happened in the winter. I think if there was more residents and actual people here and people logging in with Hydro One that they're out of power by using the app and the phone numbers, that actually tells them that they have to go turn on that power. So that's kind of a new, that's the communication.
Let the mayor speak.
I had.
So I'm going to let the mayor speak before you, Councillor Zavitz, just because he's on the.
No, that's okay. I got a question, another question, but.
Okay, thank you, and through you, and I'm not going to, defend or knock Hydro One, but I will tell you that there were many more than one residents up here who were surprised to find out that if you're on a private road and you own your own hydro poles and your lines, they aren't coming to help. And I know that happened in one case with lots of neighbors of mine, several neighbors of mine who are year-round on my cottage road, same with Councillor Burry's. So there were a lot of people who didn't realize they had to actually take the next step. They had to find their own poles in some cases, and work crews, which were awful hard to come by, to get their own power restored because it was private service on private roads.
Yeah, they had to actually get their lines put back before they could get power restored. Yeah. And then there were some people downstream of them that were actually affected. And it was a pretty interesting calamity, frankly. Councillor Zavitz, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor.
Thank you, through you. So I think two things. First of all, I'm not sure it's been said enough, but I must say as a councillor for the Township of Muskoka Lakes, the senior leadership team, so from our CAO to the mayor, to the fire chief, to operations, to Jennifer and Mark, you guys did an awesome job of answering our phone, at least you answered my phone calls, and I got a lot of phone calls, a lot of messages. You answered them. I think you did an incredible job given the tools and the dilemma in front of you. A lot of information that we could then pass on. The thing that I assured my taxpayers in Ward A of bringing forward was, and this is going to sound weird, but we trust people to rent and use our community centers, and we don't police them when they're in there having a buck and doe or a wedding or some sort of a meeting. But when it comes to this, an emergency event, we have to put in staff, whether it's from Jennifer's department or, and so people have to then drive from, I don't know, Bracebridge to Port Carling to Torrance, if you will, using that as an example. So my question is, why can we not somehow assign a particular person to be in charge of an emergency center so that staff doesn't have to drive 62 miles and what are we counting, water bottles or whatever? I mean, it's warmth, it's internet, it's relief for people who have no power for 12 days and they're disenfranchised. And so for us to have to police them, it's got to be an insurance thing, but I'm going to ask you the question. Is there no way in this new policy or enhanced policy that we could soften the terms so that we could have some malleability with how people could approach the community? They can see the community center. The OPP says, don't travel. They can see it. It's right there. They can walk to it. And I think that was a disconnect. We talked about it. So I would ask you that question.
Through you to the councillor, there's a couple of questions in there. Number one, if the people could see it, that's a different scenario than somebody that is 3 or 4 blocks away that possibly there's lines down in between. Any encouragement of using the roadway when we're being told by other authorities not to use the roadway is an approach that we do not want to take. And then to your point, we do need to have our staff go in and make sure the building is ready. Because a lot of things were noted, even in this event, one of the exits was blocked. And we've had other events where people occupied one of our community centers unknowingly to us. And they didn't even bother, unfortunately, they were volunteers and they had really good intent. but they did not check that the exits were actually cleared of snow. And we needed to shovel those exits out because somebody from the inside of the building, it looks like the exit's good, you can't get out. So that's the role that staff would play immediately. And I'm thinking of 4 or 5 key individuals from our facilities team. But the other roles that our staff play inside the facility is they provide information to people. They offer support. They're in the building. So it's not just an unoccupied building, because I've had people before open the building and then just leave. Volunteers just leave. But we actually, during an event like this, we want to be there to maintain rumor control, to help people with the contacts and supports that they require, to have a staff member that knows my phone number to reach me directly to get more staff and resources, whether it be victim services or even just if somebody's having a mental break. Keep in mind during these events, other authorities like police and ambulance are very busy. Like they are very busy because they have to access some spots and get into areas. So they have to up staff as well. And Muskoka is we're running everything on a fine line in terms of our budgets. So upstaffing is always an issue. So that's one of the reasons why you want to have a staff member in that building. And the report actually talks to that in Appendix 3. It talks about that staffing piece. If we were to envision, we called it, I think it was Director Colucci called it Muskoka Corps. If we had our own volunteer group that was trained up, we would be willing to support that with council's direction. But that would be another volunteer group that would fall under, our wing, and we would make sure that they're trained and they could serve in that role as a staff member. And then, as noted earlier, when talking to the treasurer and getting some of the feedback from our insurance provider, they were really comfortable with the fact that staff were a part of operations in the building. And I think we want to continue with that approach to some degree, where the supervisory piece is happening from a staff member. Hopefully that answers the question.
Supplemental. Yes.
Supplemental, thank you for that. I think more than anything, I asked the question to get it on the public record so that I can now refer people to the minutes of this particular meeting on this agenda where you so eloquently, gave us those words, because that was ultimately I think there was a confusion, which is lack of understanding, right? So thank you for that.
Councilor Roberts.
Thank you. My question is, what are for the community, you did talk about the management and what we were going to do to tweak ours, but for the community, what do you think the next steps should be?
Through the chair to the councillor. So I think the next steps will be getting approval through the committee. The committee has a part of it, the Emergency Management Program Committee has a part of it, the 2 heads of council, meaning the deputy mayor and the mayor. So you do have a representative there from the elected official side. And then the rest of the committee is made up of mostly the senior leadership team that are part of the emergency control group. Once we make changes to how we are going to do things, one of those pieces is the appendix that you see in here is Appendix 2. It's actually known as Appendix 17 in the Emergency Management Plan. Once we make that change and adjustment, and then we figure out how we're going to bring it back to council for council's review, there will be costs put to it. We could envision probably doing that before budget, but it actually putting it into place will take much longer, because each area that we envision having a relief center needs to be staffed up, meaning that if we're going to train volunteers to do this work, it will take time to get them trained and in place before probably before the next event occurs. So if that's the question of the councillor, other than that, the staffing piece, we kind of already have that solved right now, and we cite that in the report.
No, it wasn't, but I'll bring up more during the comments.
This is for information only, and
Okay, so I can bring it up.
I'm gonna draw it to a close.
All right, so before you draw it to close, because there's.
We have stuff to go, and
I know
right now we're
but
just.
Chair, this is, all respect, this is a very important topic for both the Walker's Point, Torrance and Milford Bay community. I reached out to the community, and I did receive emails, and I had got a call from Councillor Nishikawa the other day to talk about this. And we thought that it would be best that over the summer, we plan to converse with our communities who are very vocal. And I've talked to Councillor McIntyre before, and she wants to do this too. and get their feedback on suggestions on how we could improve the relief center service delivery. We've talked very much about the significant weather events, but we really didn't talk about the examples of other significant events, such as we had a few years ago with the forest fire in Milford Bay, the derailment down in Bell area, and what happens if we were to lose a bridge, like to Acton Island, and people had no place to go, type of thing. So what we're going to do is kind of work with the committee, understand what they suggest, how we could improve the service delivery, and then bring that to the mayor as his power of what goes on a budget. So thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. How much time is involved with training volunteers? Is it like you do it in a day, 2 days, a week, month? That's one thing.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. Yes, I've looked at this. The Red Cross uses what they call like it's a 40-hour plan. You can execute it from like a Friday to a Sunday, but then you do want to maintain that. You want to keep it going on a regular basis. And that would be one of the approaches that I suggest to council and committee. It's a program called, and council and committee can investigate this themselves. It's a program called Ready When the Time Comes, and it's specifically focused to have people ready to do this kind of work when the time comes. That program then would also mean that we would sign an agreement with the Red Cross, having them actually be the overseer of that program for our buildings. Because this would be a better approach, because it's an approved approach. It's a consistent, uniform way of doing it, and it would cover a lot of different scenarios, much to the points that were just made.
Okay, secondary. And are our staff trained to know where everything is in each and every community center?
Through the chair to the councillor, no, they're not. Basically, like I had said earlier, when staff are in the building, they become that conduit for us to have a direct link into the building with somebody that works for us, that has full WSIB, is able to relay information to us, and we can then give them information back. But a lot of our staff do have first aid training. A lot of our staff do have their necessary requirements for us to, you know, they're employees. So they're actually under our direction. So they're custodial of the building. They don't always have to know every facet of the building, because they have a direct link not only to myself, but also to the facility maintenance crew.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor McIntyre, did you have? No? Your hand was up earlier.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Just making pieces.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm going to thank Chief Morrell for a very comprehensive report. I think that council ought to understand that the days of the community person with the locked box going to the community center and opening it is long gone, for a whole pile of reasons, and that we need to become more sensitive to the fact that we've got some experts within the council, within our staff. Hopefully these things don't happen often, but when they do, I know we're in good hands. But I think we need to recognize that we should leave it in the good hands and do it through the appropriate places. So, you know, personally, I appreciate the report and the complexity of the domain, and I'll look forward to the next piece, which will be some recommendations to council on how we do some implementation. And the only other comment I'd make is that we are the township of Muskoka Lakes, not little villages. So what we have to do as a council is for the township of Muskoka Lakes, not for any one specific piece. And I know that Chief and his staff are very cognizant of that, and we have to do it appropriately and equitably. Thank you. I am going to move on. We're going to move on to Economic Development and Strategic Initiatives Officer. And we're going to look at CIP Private Sector Incentive Program First Intake. Mr. Cox, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of committee. So my first report this morning regards the spring intake of the Community Improvement Plan's Private Sector Incentive Program. As is outlined in my report, the program received 4 eligible applications for this intake, requesting just under $100,000 in grant support. Staff are currently recommending the approval of all 4 applications, the full details of which are summarized in the appendices of the report. There is a summary of the overall applications in Appendix 2, and then detailed breakdowns of each application in appendices 3 to 6. I would be happy to, that concludes my very brief remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have at this time. Thank you.
Are there questions from council members? Councillor Zavitz?
Yeah, thank you. Pleased to see Bala, the main street of Bala, Highway 169, where all these businesses are located. We spoke. Question to you, James. So why aren't there more? I guess is my question. Or are there more that don't qualify or didn't qualify? Or you'd probably bring them forward. I'm not going to answer my own question, but to you, are we receiving more queries than ever?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there were no, all the applications that we received in this intake were eligible, and they're in front of you here. These are all of the inquiries that we received too. There weren't any inquiries that we received this time around that didn't ultimately go forward. I think there's a few reasons for that, partially because of the winter that we've just had. A lot of construction work that may have been planned for the spring and summer months has been pushed to the fall or winter. So we'll have to monitor that and see if we get more interest in the fall program. Generally, I think that there is a greater awareness in the community of the Community Improvement Plan and this grant program specifically. It's been going for almost 4 years now, and we are seeing more interest in it. So just because we received fewer applications in this spring intake than we did last year, I don't think that's an indication that there's work that's being missed or is not awareness out there.
Councillor Postmark?
Thank you. And through you, in the policy, there is a reference to small businesses. And I was wondering how much that plays into selecting and approving applications.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So the reference to small businesses, certainly I think that plays into the prioritization criteria that are in the policy. So if we were in a situation where we received applications asking for $200,000 worth of grant funding and we only had $100,000 to distribute, that is one of the factors that we would consider when we're considering which ones to prioritize or not. We'd want to, if possible, help the businesses that might not necessarily have the resources available to pursue a beautification project or one of the projects in the CIP if they did not receive support. It's supposed to be an incentive for doing that program. As the township still has a substantial reserve of CIP funding that was built up in the first few years of the program where there weren't as many applications, that kind of prioritization has not been necessary up until this point.
Supplement?
No, another question.
Another question is acceptable.
This policy was brought in place before I was a councillor, but perhaps you could review for me how we think the structural and mechanical stream is beneficial to the vitality of the communities, the 2 communities in question.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the structural and mechanical upgrade stream, it's first and foremost intended to ensure that the buildings that are in our downtowns are in good repair and that they are usable year round. They're accessible to the public, but primarily it's that year-round use that was the criteria, because one of our major economic development goals is to encourage the year-round economy. And so by investing in ensuring that the structures and buildings that we have in our downtown are accessible year-round and are usable year-round, it was intended that that would indirectly support the
year-round economy. There's also elements in that stream that speak to, energy efficiency, environmental improvements, things like that. Those are secondary objectives of the program, but it was that year-round use that is first and foremost considered.
Comments or questions? Councillor Kent?
Just adding on to Councillor Bosworth's comment, the first application we ever saw was for an insurance company. And I remember being quite unhappy with that. It is a shame that the 4 applications that are here, I'm glad they're getting the money, but none of them are even proposing a bench or a flower pot or anything in front of their places to make it more community oriented. It's all internal work. And I do find that that's a shame, because the goal of this is to make the community more pleasant, and it's good for these people, but it's not necessarily a direct benefit to anybody using Port Carling or Bala to have somebody's internal mechanics work better. And I think I would love to see the money not being spent on these and being spent on different types of applications. Just a comment, not a question.
Yeah, that wasn't a question. So I'm going to have to call. Questions only because I haven't read this. But if you've got a comment, I'm going to read the motion and then moved by Councillor Zavitz and seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the Community Improvement Plan (CIP) Private Sector Incentive Program funding recommendations outlined in Appendix 2 of the staff report DSES-2025-024 be approved, and that the Director of Development Services and Environmental Sustainability be authorized to complete each financial assistance agreement on behalf of the township. Comments? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I guess to answer Councillor Kent's question from my perspective, what I see as a sound economic development policy, we've, to your point, had been dealing with this in the previous council, is that each business comes forward and contributes in like to the township. So it's a funds matching program. So when we're spending 25,000, they're spending at least 25,000 and or more. So we are going to see a net benefit, a net improvement to our townscape, if you will. So, I mean, I guess maybe to James, is that a viable reason in my mind that this is what's happening? I mean, it's not a $25,000 give, it's a $50,000 minimum expenditure. Correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I would concur with that assessment. CIPs are intended to be programs that incentivize development. So it's not simply a grant to complete some work in its entirety. It is designed to encourage business owners and property owners to invest in their properties for the reasons that we discussed and are included in the plan.
Any other comments? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I notice here that one business has two grants. And that, so really, instead of getting 25, they're almost getting 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's different things. How does that work out? In other words, if you're going to do 3 things, can you get 75,000?
Through you, Mr. Chair, under the CIP policy, each property is eligible to submit 2 separate CIP applications for separate streams per year.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and through you. And I can sense some issues with the policy as it's presently drafted. Obviously, it doesn't always move the way everybody might or individual people might want it to move. And I mean, there's assurances in here that these 4 recommended approvals all fit squarely within the policy. If we have an issue, if we think it should be bigger, smaller, fewer in number, I think we need to raise that not through this, but through separately and have another look at the policy. I think we've done an annual review and upgrade on that one, if I'm not mistaken. But this is an investment in the community, and I think Mr. Cox said it very well. It's we are trying to build out a year-round opportunity for an economy to employ and to bring families and to get people to settle here. And this is money invested in that future. I would love to see, $51,000 requests for people who are here year-round, operating a business, growing a business, trying to find new businesses to expand into. But if I understood correctly, we had 4 inquiries, we have 4 applications, and we have 4 approvals. Maybe the other thing we need to do in addition to revisiting the eligibility criteria is identify how do we go, maybe a different approach to marketing this or communicating the goals or communicating eligibility so that more people realize that there's an opportunity here to have us co-invest with them.
Councillor Postmarth.
And bridging off of what Mayor Kelly just said, I looked at what we did last year, and in November, we had 4 applications, and 3 of the 4 were for structural and mechanical, very similar applications of what we are seeing this time.
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of chair's prerogative and say that my disappointment is that none of these are in high priority. None of it's attainable or employee housing. None of it's shoreline structure or ecological spaces, building accessibility. So we're down into medium and low priorities, and surely we have got to be able to figure out how we can get attainable or employee housing, which are potentially 2 of our biggest issues outside of our individual control. How we can't get them into this kind of a program. But that's my editorial comment as chair. I'm going to now, with seeing no other questions or comments, I'm going to ask for the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Still you?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Cox, community grant funding approval.
Yes. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee.
On one of those, I have a conflict. Do I have to leave for the whole thing, or just can that be pulled separate, or how do you handle
that? Madam Clerk, how do you want to handle it? I'd prefer if Councillor Edwards was here and able to be here, except for the one, if we can do that. And it's just really the vote.
Yeah, that's right. It's just a vote on the one, yeah.
I'm supposed to tell you that in future, you're supposed to give 24 hours notice.
I don't have anything.
We're gonna have to take a break if that's the case, or you can just. Yeah, okay. To expedite things. Okay, Mr. Cox, the floor is yours. My apologies for the procedural hiccup.
So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My second report this morning regards the 2025 community grant intake or community grant program. The intake period from applications ran from April 22nd to April 23rd this year, and we received 13 applications requesting a combined total of $30,950 in grant funding. Approval recommendations for up to the maximum $25,000 budget, which council approved for this program, are included in the report in Appendix 1. If committee approves all of the grant funding recommendations, then this grant's budget will be fully allocated and the township will not proceed with a fall intake of the program. I will draw committee's attention to one omission in the report. My report indicates that the Minette Tones application had not received grant funding before. It has since come to my attention that there was grant funding issued to this organization in 2018. However, this does not change the recommendation of the report. That concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions that committee may have at this time. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councillor Roberts, what a shock. Not today.
Thank you. I did it's unfortunate that one of the councillors is not here to raise a concern on something that he or she talked to me about. So I'm going to bring it up. The question being on the Racing Boat Hall of Fame is a business, which would be better fit under the CIP, but they're outside the zone.
No,
And the
it's a
question,
charity.
Dean,
Just for clarification, the Canadian Raceboat Hall of Fame is a registered Canadian charity.
it is, but just outside the question I have is that what is the Race Boat Hall of Fame giving back to the community other than in events? Are you aware of that or anything? Just, I know it's just a small amount of $800, but lots of these they're giving back to the community, and it's very noticeable that they're giving back. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, with the application in question, as it was noted, we are recommending partial approval of the grant in question. The reasons for the application being recommended for approval would be that the space in question is sometimes used for community events. Muskoka Tourism recently held part of our stargazing series out there. Their bird watching series has been out there as well. And that, out of those considerations, that is why the grant was included for partial funding approval.
Okay. I'll pass that on to the person.
Your worship.
Thank you. And through you, I'd just like to follow that with the fact that, in fact, they're preserving, protecting, and promoting a major chunk of Muskoka's marine heritage. A lot of the drivers and very successful ones, Gold Cup winners, Harold Wilson and his wife, Lorna Reed, were world-class #1 boat racers in the Gold Cup days in the late 30s and the 40s. There's all sorts of that type of activity. A lot of the wooden boats that built here are also built race boats. So before we think that it's, something else, a good, I would say 50% of what's on display is artifacts and promotional stories about the history of the race boat heritage originating from the township of Muskoka Lakes.
Councillor Kent? No, Mike? Okay, then I'm gonna read the resolution then. Moved by Councillor Kent and seconded by Councillor Bosemore. No, it can't be by Councillor Bosemore. By Mayor Kelly. Be it resolved that the 2025 Community Grants Program funding approval recommendations outlined in Appendix 1 of the staff report DSES-2025-025 be approved. Are there any other comments? Put on your mic, please.
Help me to I
Mayor
will.
Kent. Okay, sorry.
Your
Councillor
Honor.
Kent.
Just a comment with regard to the race boat, for example. I like the fact that in that request, they're asking for seating and picnic tables that are going to enhance traffic. I would rather see $25,000 from the incentive program go to this and double the amount of community grants. These are things that really make a difference to the community. And these are the programs that build traffic and give money to people in need and give established programs. And so just as a comment for future consideration, this program is always oversubscribed. Another intake would get oversubscribed, in my opinion. And the other one, if we're doing structural and mechanical issues, I think some is necessary, but maybe we want to double this program and take $25,000 out of the other one for future discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
Question to the chair or to the clerk. Do we still have quorum?
So Councillor Baltimore has a conflict because he's
Yes, I know.
he's a director of Safe Quiet Lakes.
But the question.
We got 6.
Yes, you have quorum.
Okay,
Yep.
just confirming. Thank you. That was my simple question.
Oh, I didn't realize you were the deputy clerk today.
I asked the clerk.
Oh, co-chair. Did you want in here? You bet. Every day. There any other comments or questions? I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cox.
I'm not going anywhere.
You are? Oh, yeah, I see it here. Yep. We'll just get the 2 conflicts back. We're hitting lunch. Don't you worry. We're hitting. Just want everyone to know, the public, that the mayor's concerned about lunch.
We're ahead of schedule.
Shush. Councillor Bosermorth.
Chair, I apologize. It must have been late in the evening when I read this report and I missed the fact that we were a donation to Safe Quiet Lakes and I have a conflict because I'm on the board.
Thank you. And you'll be very assured to know that we still had quorum, even though you had to exit. And had we not, we would have just redone everything and pulled out the conflicts. But thank you.
Quorum's not required if somebody declares a conflict, is it not? It's the members that are there. Is that right?
I'm not going down this rabbit hole because I
No,
don't. Yeah, we're risking lunch if we go down this. Okay, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee. So my third and final report this morning concerns a requested 6-month extension to the CIP Private Sector Incentive Program Grant, CIP 0624. This is a $25,000 grant for 3068 Muskoka Road 169, otherwise known as the Lakeside Bala Restaurant. Council originally approved this grant in the spring 2024 intake, and as per the grant agreement that was entered into, the work is to be complete by July 22nd of this year. The applicants have noted that because of the severe weather conditions in late winter and early spring, they have had to delay the start of the intended work and will now be doing it during the summer months, which creates some scheduling problems around the operating hours of the business. As a result, they do not believe they can complete the approved work by the original date. Staff have reviewed the request for extension and have no concern with granting it. Further details of the original application and the extension request can be found in my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions committee may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Are there any questions, Councillor Kent?
Thank you, through you. Just, I should know this, but I don't know the answer, which is, I assume you don't roll the money out. How is the money dispersed to them? Have they received this funding already? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the CIP incentive program operates solely on a reimbursement basis. So no money is issued until the project is complete. We have the final invoices and staff have inspected the work.
Okay, thank you.
I'll read the motion. Moved by Councillor Zavitz and seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the request for a 6-month extension to CIP Private Sector Incentive Program Grant CIP-06.24 be approved, and that the Director of Development Services Environmental Sustainability be authorized to complete an amended financial assistance agreement on behalf of the township. Any other questions or comments? I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. There's no unfinished business. There's new business. The District Municipality of Muskoka updates. We've got those. Anybody want to say anything or any questions about any of that? The general information or correspondence was found at the tab. Everybody's got that. The committee in closed session, we do not need. We're getting lunch. Unless Councillor Roberts has got more questions. I think we're ready. Call the question. Boy, Councillor Zavitz, you've been busy today. You're moving this one too. And seconded by Councillor Bosermorth. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 11:39 and 30 seconds, and that the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee be held on Wednesday, July the 16th, 2025 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in beautiful downtown Port Carling, Ontario. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, one and all.